Well, well, well. The well is one of my favorite items in Ponytown because it has an interesting story behind it, or a history behind it, and it has this kind of great era around it. The well, if you don't know, is an item in Ponytown that was added to the game at just some random point in time, honestly. But the thing is a lot of people kind of knew it was already in the game. It just wasn't added to the game. It wasn't something you could interact with. It wasn't on the main map. It wasn't in the party island or anything like that. It just was in the game. It was in the game file somewhere. And a handful of people knew that. And it was just like, is the well ever going to be added to the game? And what do you know? One day it finally was just randomly added to the game. Now, a lot of people thought, oh, maybe it'll be added to the main island or something like that, but it wasn't. It was added to the party island of all things, and it still isn't on the main map. And honestly, I don't know if it ever will be on the main map. But my point is, this was something that was kind of hidden away, that like if you knew what you were doing, you would know it existed in the game. It just wasn't something you had access to yet. And another thing kind of similar to that was the rake. Again, the rake was something that was in the game files for a long time. People kind of knew about it, but it wasn't in the game. And a lot of people, like myself, were like, well, if it does get added, it's most likely going to be a new tool. And what do you know? It finally got added, and it was a new tool that allowed us to change the season of certain objects and items on the party island and stuff like that. And it was great. Now, there's an interesting era around this where there was a lot of stuff in the game files that people had access to that they knew about because of custom servers. Custom servers, when they were around and everything like that, the game files were available for people to download. And in those game files were the well, the rake, and another interesting item, rain. Rain was actually in the game files, and it still is to this day, or at least I assume it is, because it's still there for the event server and stuff like that, but it hasn't been added to the game. So will rain be this magical third thing that ever gets added to the game? That was one of the things that a lot of people kind of discussed back in the day when this was information that was public, that everyone knew that rain was in the game somewhere. It just wasn't added yet. I really wanted to see it happen, but unfortunately it never did happen. But since then, a lot of things have been added to the game that haven't been added to the game, if that makes sense. So I kind of want to talk about all those things, or at least a handful of those things. Now, I can't say for certain that these things are 100% in the game files. I can only go off of what we've seen in the event server, because if it's in the event server, it's almost certainly in the game files and could technically, theoretically, be added to the main game in some capacity eventually, whether it be some kind of structure or item on the main map, or just something that we can place on our party island, like how we had with the well and everything. So let's talk about them, starting with, of course, the lighthouse. The lighthouse is something that if you actually go to like Breezy Town, I'm sure it's probably still there, but it exists. It was there at least for a short period of time. So I think the lighthouse and honesty could come to the game at some point. I think I did a video not too long ago talking about structures that are likely or not likely to eventually come to the game, and I don't think I ever mentioned the lighthouse at all. What would this lighthouse be like? Honestly, if it's anything like how it is in Breezy Town, it's just kind of there. But I would like to think that it does more or something. But realistically, what is it gonna do? Maybe it has an interior, but what's the point? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you think the lighthouse could be for. But something else, and this is actually more interesting to me than most of the other stuff that I'm probably going to share on this list, that is the fish and the coral and the like seaweeds and all the different like ocean items. They're very prominent in the event server, probably even in this event server. Usually in the event server you can pick them up. There's like the seaweed, I think there's bubbles even, like there's like all kinds of stuff. None of this stuff is animated, but all this stuff exists in the event server. Most events that I've been to in the past year have had fish or one of these fish related items in the game just there. There's also coral. I don't know if I mentioned coral yet. There's coral that can be found and everything. I think this is kind of like the biggest deal of everything, just because of how much there is in terms of items. There's the fish. There's like 4 or 5 different kinds of fish. There's a bunch of different coral. There's, like I said, the kelp or the seaweed or whatever. And then there's bubbles and all this kind of stuff like that. It's like, why did they add all this? They couldn't have went through the trouble of adding all of these items and all of these things just for one event that happened to be fish themed or something like that, right? There's no way they added all of that just for a fish themed event a long time ago and then just left the stuff in the game files for people to play with in the future. There's no way. That's what my conspiracy brain says, is that there's no way they did all of that just for one event and then just let people play with it from there on. I think that surely they're doing something with it. My hope is that some kind of aquarium eventually gets added to the game. I know a lot of people before in the past have hoped for some kind of underwater world to go to. It's kind of goofy. People want like to be able to go underwater and have like a map underwater. The same thing that people want like a map in the sky for some reason. They want to be able to go to the clouds. I don't really know what the deal is with that, but honestly, the ocean thing is starting to seem more and more likely as time goes on because these things exist. And again, they're not animated, but the item itself exists, so it couldn't take too much extra work to animate them and start doing a little bit of work on there on the side until it eventually comes to the game. So there's also nukes. Now this is something that I think has been in the game for a super long time as well. Honestly, it was probably there when the well was found in the game files, but the nuke is a weird thing because it's been there for forever, and it's, again, I usually see it on an event server whenever there's an event. I think there's some in like Breezy Town, of course. It's just such a weird item. It's obviously more Fallout Equestria, it's obviously more Ash's Town than it is Ponytown, but it does exist in the game files. It's there, it exists. I don't actually think anything will ever come of it. I think it could be a funny, goofy item to eventually give players, just like they did with the well or something. But I don't really see them ever doing that because it's so random and out of place, in my opinion. Maybe eventually when they add minigames or something like that, or like maybe if they add achievements or something like that, maybe you can unlock it as a placeable item, as like a super rare like thing that you can unlock or something. Maybe something like that, maybe. But I don't ever see it ever really coming to the game. Now, something else that I don't ever really see coming to the game is, of course, all of the like DJ equipment, I guess, or the event equipment. Stuff like obviously the screen itself is technically an item, like the screen that plays the streams in the event servers. Obviously that's an item. I don't think it's probably going to come to the game. But stuff like that, the like railings and support beams and stuff like that are like metal and stuff like that. Maybe those could come, but I doubt it. But they do, again, it exists in the game files. It's there. They could technically just throw it in one day. Maybe they want to throw a stage or something. I've mentioned before that I think a theater would be really cool, like for stage plays and stuff, that kind of theater. And they could use those items for that. There's obviously like the stage lights. There's like, again, like the DJ equipment, like the turntables and the huge speakers and things like that. The huge speakers, turntables, that stuff. Again, it's like, I don't know if that would be added to the game, but hey, like a really cool like music spot or something, like some kind of dance floor kind of situation, a really cool club or something, a dance club. Add it to the game. You have all the stuff for it already. It could technically happen. I could see it happening. It exists in the game files, and I think that's something else that we can kind of keep an eye on. And next, and this one's a little bit weird because we kind of have it, but we don't have this specific version of this thing. But in the event server, you probably have seen, or at least maybe not in this event, but in previous events, you've probably seen metal trash cans around. I don't know why they went from metal trash can to like wooden trash can and didn't just give us both types of trash cans. It's really weird and bizarre in my opinion. So of everything on this list, this is probably the most likely thing we'll eventually get is a metal version of the trash can, just because it's like, it's there, it's done, it's been done since the library came out, because that's when they added trash cans. So it's kind of weird that they didn't just give us both versions of it. Maybe it's because they didn't want to do metal for some reason. I don't know. There had to have been a reason why they didn't want to give us metal, right? And I don't really know what it is, but that is one of those things that's like, it's there. It's one of the more likely things that can just randomly pop up in the game at some point. Now, there's a couple of other things too, and this is going to be a little bit kind of nitpicky or like whatever. But technically, string is another thing. It's technically in the main game because it's on the main map. They use it for like hanging different stuff. You see it in the marketplace. There's string all in different places and stuff like that. It would be nice to finally have that on the place as something we can interact with ourselves as players on the party island or something, but it's technically something that's in the game files and in the main game. So it's a little bit nitpicky. And then the other thing too is like the diagonal fences. Again, that's like in the game files, but we don't really have access to it, but it is in the main game as well. So again, it's kind of like a whatever, it's there. Maybe something will happen with it eventually. And placeable plushies is again something that it doesn't exist in the main game because we can't do it in the main game, but it's in the event server, and like whenever you host an event or like build for the event server, you can place the plushies down wherever you want. I don't see why we don't just go ahead and do that for the party island. Once you unlock it, you can place it or something, give us a new plushie tab in the build menu, let us do it or something. I think that could be great, and I don't see why not, right? I don't think there's too much else. Let me know in the comments below, or if you see me in the event somewhere here, let me know if there's anything I missed. Maybe I'll make a part 2 of this or something. Let me know what you're most excited about out of these things that I listed here. Which one do you want to see added to the game the most? Because again, they're technically in the game. They're within the code. They're within the game file somewhere, but they're just not in the main game or in the build menu yet. So let me know what you guys think, and please do remember to like, subscribe, share, and do all those wonderful things like that, because when you do wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself, and I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.